Okay, thank you. Some acrobatics on the stage. If everybody is ready, we can maybe go to the examples of the actual proposal projects to discuss a bit inside the projects on what are the valuable points of these proposals.
So attention please, I don't really program. So, Frank, I think you are protected now, you can.
Thank you. Good. There are not too many slides, I will bear with you. It's just a number of 5 or 6 projects, examples, to demonstrate exactly what are the ingredients of this nice cake. Right? How do you build that cake? There's one, this is the first project example I would like to share with you. It's funded under a project program that is specifically designed for small medium enterprises. As I mentioned this morning, some of the projects under the capacity program are not thematic, but they just want to subsidize and invest in projects that find solutions for problems that are shared with many SMEs. And I will give a clear example of that. So it's not a solution for one individual SME, but for a group of SMEs or for a whole sector. That is the difference. Huh? So the European Commission would never fund just one SME. That's against the competitive rules. But a group of SMEs to change society, to make a change in numbers of jobs and growth, that is perfectly legible. Next one, please. Under this particular part of the program, you see here a short summary of the rules. And I use a table like this to explain to the scientists very quickly in one slide, these are the rules for this particular program. And you can make similar slides for other programs as a quick reference guide. That really helps. To summarize, for this program, the objective is a knowledge base and find a solution for problems shared by SMEs or a community of SMEs. The activities that can be funded are research and innovation. Innovation, obviously, because we are talking about industrial research. Consortium management itself is funded. The training of the SMEs is funded. And promotion and dissemination is funded. So it's more than just the engineering part. The size of the consortium, in this case, is an association representing many SMEs. There's one partner there that takes a lead, but they have a network of many SMEs, so they can create impact. And I will demonstrate how. So at least one association or 2 national associations to make sure that we're talking about international content. A core group of SMEs that are testing out a new solution, and so-called RTE providers. And these are research technology developers that can be an applied research institute or a university or an academic group. And they can be in Europe or elsewhere. So, for example, you could work with European SMEs and then have a European coordinator and an African university with a specific nice engineering team who can help coordinate and develop this project. The budget is fairly large, 2 to 5 million euros for just a few partners. And the important thing is that this is similar to contract research. The ownership of the intellectual property resides with the SMEs, not with the universities. Of course, on the other hand, they are paid at 100%. So they give away their ownership of the results, but they build a relationship with industry. And nothing bars you from using this as a first to do further projects where you do own your own intellectual property data. But the purpose here is to find a solution to the SMEs. So in this case, you're a service provider. University or a research institute as a service provider. And not for one SME, but for a group. Now let's go to the next slide. And then see what the content of that is. Next. The acronym of the project was called Space to Tax. And that's a very old acronym. But they achieved in one sentence, or two rather, to summarize very, very concise what they wanted to do. And then I refer back to the exercise we did this morning in the abstract. It's easy to tell a long story. It's more difficult to summarize that into a very precise, concise text. And especially with objectives, you have to be very, very precise in your wording. So with that, that's really what they're actually going to do. 43. The background of this project was that there is a problem. The first point in the abstract. What is the problem? There's a problem in the European textile industry. If the textiles are produced and then colored with fabric colors, you have a lot of wastewater. All the colorants are ending up in the wash water, and some of these colorants are toxic, carcinogenic. So that is creating a burden on the environment. It's a health hazard, and the small medium enterprises actually have to pay taxes for the waste treatment. So that is a problem. And the users, the end users are the SMEs, because they have the burden to deal with the responsibility of the waste. One back, please. So this project identified a possible solution with the European Space Agency, where the European Space Agency has been sitting on technology that was developed for a mission to Mars. You know that if you fly to Mars, there's no water. So you have to carry and recycle your water with 100% efficiency. And they have built a biomembrane, a biological membrane, that was 100% efficient. Now this is super high-tech. However, nobody is flying to Mars for the time being, so what do you do with the technology? And this project transfers the technology from the European Space Agency and applies it in the textile, low-tech environment. The SMEs could never have developed this. So the project pays for the transfer, the translation of this technology into something useful. So really, it's high-tech from space down to text. Space to text. Next one, please. I skipped the technology. I'm not going to talk about microbes on filters, but I'm going to talk about what is the impact. And they describe the impact, and I summarized it this way. They describe the impact for the SMEs as energy savings, water savings, less taxes on waste, sludge that is the leftover after filtering, they can recover and it's not released into the environment. Equally important, it's not just nice for the environment, it's also good for the economy. They did an estimation on how much value is created. Nobody knows exactly, but they did a well-educated guess. 165 million euro market created by these new membranes. And there are new companies now making these membranes and selling them to textile companies. So there are new jobs, new companies created to sell new high product. And it's also good for jobs and the environment. It increases competitiveness. They made an effort to estimate how many jobs are generated. And oh yeah, by the way, small bonus on the Kyoto treatment for CO2. So that whole package is incredibly valuable. If you calculate the value of all that, and you calculate back that the whole project was maybe 1 or 2 million euro investment, you have a fantastic return on investment. So the principle is good, the concept is good, but how do you do this in practice? And that is the next slide. You need to explain how to implement this. Huh? So you see that the Industrial Association, one in this case, representing all the textile industry, is the lead organization. They do not do the research. They have the RTD performers, in this case 2 universities and a research institute, that are doing the research. They transfer these membranes and make it suitable for small applications in a very robust environment in the SME sector. You have a small core group of SMEs who are testing this out, and they're the first to use and benefit. Of course, they need to invest a bit of money and time, but they also receive subsidies, and they're the very first to benefit. But that's not sufficient. To really create benefit, you need to have this widely adopted. And that is where the association comes in. They create workshops, conferences, they train other SMEs, they help with the marketing to a certain extent, in such a way that this new solution is adopted throughout Europe. And of course, they also have publications to the government and to stakeholders. They have a website, they talk to schools about a good example, and that is dissemination in a wider sense, not just to the SMEs. So this plan was the reason why they were awarded this contract. Not just we use the membranes now in a new way, and then end of story, nice license agreement, but technology transfer in real life, where you actually have a sustainable but widely used solution. That is impact. And again, you can calculate back the return on investment on the initial investment, and that's probably 20 or 30-fold. Next one. So dissemination strategy is more than just talking to the scientific community, and the next few slides are just a very brief overview of what can be written in your dissemination chapter. So I will just skip them, but you can read them later as reference. Next. You can measure dissemination, how many publications, how many reports, how many people are attending workshops like here. Is there any follow-up after a workshop? Are there any further proposals coming out of a workshop? Things like that, those are metrics. Next. General recommendation to put all the dissemination exploitation in a separate work package. Yes? Next. And that's just a general slide, but just please remember, and we will come back to this tomorrow, knowledge transfer is far more than just licensing patents. That is an old concept that comes out of the US and is widely disseminated. You have to write patents, protect them, license them, earn money. There is far more value to be created if you think knowledge transfer in these ways. And if you describe knowledge transfer in any of these ways. And it can be as simple as sending a few students. They know the context, they bring their knowledge into a different context, and that is also knowledge transfer. It can be very, very effective and valuable. And you can go to the high end of setting startup companies, of course. I'm on the board of several startup companies to help them in the first phase. That's not a problem, but it's not the only means of knowledge transfer. And what is really important is there internally that you have to select the type of knowledge transfer for your capacity. If it's a small project, keep it small. Don't aim for startup companies if you're a small, very small institute and you have only 10 scientists. Be reasonable there. Next one, please. Yes, of course, there are knowledge transfer offices around the universities that have some misconceptions. I say misconceptions because these are really things that are not true. And I can tell you later in discussions why, but this is really, universities should not patent, only publish and teach. Well, that is not a rule, it's a decision. You may publish and teach and patent, or you may opt to do either one or, but it's not a rule. The mandate is what you choose yourself. Second thing is the other extreme. You see that in some American institutes where they patent almost everything. And then they forget whether it's valuable to patent or not. We will deal with that tomorrow. I can give you a couple of examples. One is actually Philips. Philips went through as a big company, they went through their patent database. They found that out of, I don't know how many patents, there were 5,000 patents that were not used. They paid for the fees, but they were not used, and 1,500 they actually did not even want to use. They could sell this to third parties. And that's exactly what they did over the last 10 years. They sold 1,500 patents to other parties, sometimes to competitors. And they make money out of it instead of losing on it. So we will discuss that tomorrow in more detail. Next one, please. Yeah, I'll skip this one. It's just one example. Next, please. Challenges with knowledge transfer are very diverse, and we can take some of these slides in more detail tomorrow. But I just wanted to have this in your mind to think about it. If you have very specific questions about these, please let them bring through into the discussion tomorrow, because that link to the intellectual property will be more appropriate. Some of these issues are coming back in the examples of the projects that I will give in a minute. Next. Another checklist for you. Next one. And the same thing, checklist again. But we can go into more detail tomorrow about this. Next. A very simple concept, just 3 slides before I get into the project examples, and that is that I mentioned this morning open innovation briefly. Many people don't really work in open innovation concepts. They think in this way, and that is a very linear way, which is okay, but it's not sufficient. They have an idea, they start writing a proposal, get some subsidy, and they transfer it to industry, they ask for money from investors and a bank, and then they develop a product that is going to the market. That is the general value chain that you see in any textbook. But the problem with this is that it's a very long chain, and certainly in some sectors, like the pharmaceutical sector, is an extremely long chain, 14 years. If anything happens in sequence of events, everything is lost. The product will not reach the market. Everything is in the wastebasket. Now that is a waste of value and knowledge. In open innovation, you can actually work in a network. Next. And many of us in the biotechnology sector, for example, very strongly, in engineering and ICT sometimes also, you work already in networks. If you connect these networks together around a common problem, the networks are still there, they were already there, they are growing, and sharing that knowledge in an open way, not for free. You can control the sharing of the knowledge, but in an open way, you share freely, in an organized way. Then you can create far more value, because if anything happens with one product idea, you can go back to the networks and you generate a second idea and a third. And sometimes you have different products and projects coming out in different directions. So connecting networks are a very efficient way of dealing with open innovation. And that is the principle according to which I work and which I will share with the project examples here. Connecting existing networks sometimes can create a lot of value. And that sounds complicated, but actually in the examples you will see that it can be very simple. Next. This we discussed already. Next. I will discuss this tomorrow. It's the time to market. Next. Next one, please. First example is a very simple example. It started with collaboration under the mobility program between 2 universities and 1 industry, small medium enterprise. Next one, please. The concept was that the small medium enterprise wanted to set up knowledge about catalysts, not just enzymes, but also inorganic catalysts that can accelerate a chemical reaction and make it much more efficient. The trick is that they had a platform where they could design these catalysts on demand. That is valuable for industry, and their customers are pharmaceutical industry, cosmetics industry, agriculture, fertilizer industry, lots of customers there. High valuable contracts. However, they could not do that alone. They're a company of 20 people. So they needed partners, and they contracted 2 academic partners, 2 universities, one in Ireland and one in England. And they transferred in this project fellows from the academia to industry to work with their academic knowledge and transfer that knowledge to the company. And, that was unique here, they also sent industrial fellows back to the universities to teach the university teams about intellectual property, project management, about decision criteria, about the market, So the universities actually were learning as well. Now this mutual exchange, and you see this was like a 2-year project for €1 million, resulted in a lot of value, as you can see in the bottom of the slide. So in 2 years, with €1 million you can invest, and now we have a center of excellence there with a number of universities attached. Together they apply for bigger projects. They hope to achieve much more money now. The company itself is growing and is ready for asking private investments and creating more jobs. So that is a win-win on both sides. The academics have more research projects, the networks are expanding, starting from a very small, just 3 partners. Next one. Under the same mobility program, I have another example in which I was involved where we had a very simple case that really grew into something substantial. Next one, please. The fact was that there was a lady scientist coming from Hungary. She was born in Hungary, but has been working for the National Institute of Health in America for 17 years. I worked there myself. She knew me from another time, but she knew that I had worked there. And she said, Frank, please, can you help me to get back to Europe? Because I hate the States. She really wanted to go back. This was under Bush. She wanted to go back to Europe. But after 17 years, she had only her family she knew, but no professional network back in Hungary. And she told me what she was working on a new generation HIV vaccines, the example I gave you earlier, nanomedicine. It was DNA delivered through nanoparticles through the skin into the bloodstream, stimulating the immune system in a very special way. It's a therapeutic vaccine, and actually this is being tested with patients now. But at that moment in time, a number of years ago, she asked me, how do I get back to Europe? I said, okay, we write a grant together. It was like something like 700,000 or 800,000 euro under the executive chair program. That means that the money is for a foreigner to come out of another country, in this case outside Europe, to go back into Europe and set up a professor chair and an academic group. Transfer of knowledge internationally. But we did not stop there. Actually, we wrote it in such a way, the proposal, that she would set up her academic group, train students and postdocs like any other professor, also set up the technology transfer center of excellence on training for HIV, because in Hungary and Eastern Europe at that moment in time there was very little training for HIV. So that was part of the proposal. And she would set up a company. She had already been involved with a company in the US and was a very entrepreneurial lady. So I had a number of tick boxes here, success factors. Young female top scientist, NIH, coming from America back to Hungary, and commercialization potential and training. Now what do you want more? So the grant was awarded. And she brought her network with her. She had already contacts in Sweden and in France and Italy with hospitals and research institutes. And now together they formed a cluster. We will see that in the next slide. With that cluster, the whole cluster is not a Hungarian cluster, geographically, regionally oriented. No, it's a thematic cluster. It's a cluster like a virtual enterprise. Everybody has their own role. You have academic groups, you have groups for clinical studies, you have groups for clinical manufacturing, you have groups for clinical studies in hospitals, and everybody is working along the value chain towards getting this vaccine tested with patients out to the market. And some of the hospitals are l'Hôpital Saint-Pierre in Paris, the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. These are top institutes. Now, when we formed that cluster on paper first, based on her contacts, the idea came as a cluster to put a management structure on top, and you can ask for more money. And that's what we did, and we attracted another 8 million euro just to manage the cluster. And now these groups are all working towards testing this vaccine, but the same delivery vehicle, these nanoparticles through the skin, can also be used for other vaccines. So now there's a group on the academic side working on a vaccine for allergy. So you can reuse the machinery if you like. Once you've set it up, you become much more efficient. And you can attract far more money. The company itself can attract private money, but the cluster can attract subsidies from the public side. Nothing bars you from setting up international clusters like this. Nowadays, this is feasible. So that's creating value in a different way. Next one, please. Next. Third example is something related to a non-European country. This was a project that was developed last year, so it's not really active yet. But the actual principle here was a diagnostics for early miscarriage. You know that in Europe, or anywhere in the world, sometimes women lose their baby because something happens during the gestation pregnancy. The only way when you can actually test for this is in the last trimester, in the last 3 months by echoscopy. That's the only means we have now to see whether a baby is misformed, whether there's a problem or not. Many women have a perfectly healthy pregnancy. So how do you distinguish? How do you focus on the risk group and to identify women who are in a high risk and then follow them up medically close enough, much earlier than that? You need genetic markers, you need blood analysis, you need all kinds of high-tech stuff. So we set up a consortium, in this case, with a number of hospitals, the University of Oxford, in the UK, and the University of Manchester. The University of Oxford have genetic testing capability. The University of Manchester have the IT, informatics. They could master with these millions of databases. And the hospitals are spread throughout Europe. Now, while we were discussing this, I was giving a workshop in Mexico, and they said, one of the medical doctors there said, well, you know that we have the same problem, but the prevalence, the frequency is 10 times in Europe. So we said, wow, this becomes interesting. If we have one big hospital in Mexico with as many patients as we have in 7 hospitals in Europe, we can have 2 different populations. We can see why the frequency is so much more prevalent in Mexico than in Europe. And we have, with a few hospitals, we have more patient numbers. So this is now under negotiation. And the second element in there is that there was a Spanish company who is doing the testing. And they will transfer the knowledge to a Mexican company in Monterrey, who will set up the same kind of testing equipment and then address the Mexican market. And they have a commercial agreement. So there's academic, medical, and industry collaboration. If this will be successful in a few years, hopefully we will see what comes out. But it could save lives, but also generate research, new research lines, and business. That is impact. Next. The fourth, that is the company I used to work for. As I said, we were a company developing HIV drugs and diagnostics here in Belgium, and we grew rather successfully. But the fact why, or the reason why it was growing successfully was one of the ingredients was a good team, an absolute excellent team. And the second element was that we could address the technology in 2 ways. We had a technology for those, are any biologists here in the room? No, not really. The principle was to work with live cells and a fluorescent marker, so you could see whether a cell was infected with the virus or not. And then you have the cell growing with the viruses, and then you put in extra anti-HIV drugs, and you see whether they inhibit the infection in the laboratory. If you do that in tiny drops of liquid with many cells with the robots, you can test millions and millions of combinations. Now, back in 1994, this was very, very high-tech, new. Now, this is being done in our places, but at that moment in time, it was completely new. And that was the reason why we, as a small company, could compete with GlaxoSmith and with Pfizer and with Merck. So we had a very high-tech solution. But We actually used this to set up also automatic diagnostic testing. And that was an immediate market where we could earn some money in the short term and reinvest in the longer term projects. You can do the same in an academic year. You have a short-term project, you use the knowledge and you reinvest that to and let a larger strategic program grow over time. So that kind of thinking is not just in e-commerce, you can use it in academia too. Well, those are the numbers there. The next one, please. And that is the last example I would like to share with you before everybody falls asleep. I'm very sorry that this is a very intense, long day, but this is more related to agriculture, so the agronomists of you might relate to this. Again, this was a result from one of the workshops I gave in Mexico. And there, one of the participants of the workshop, filling in those papers that I mentioned earlier, they said, well, we are working on jatropha. Jatropha palms and plants, they deliver oils that can be used for biofuel, biodiesel, and they grow, they are native to Mexico, but they do grow in Africa, here in your country, in India too. The problem is that these are very toxic, and they have very different yields. Sometimes they grow well, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they are sensitive to diseases, so they're not so easy to cultivate. And it happens to be that in Mexico they have 300 species of jatrophas. And many of these species have unique characteristics that could be fantastically valuable economically if you could make them on a commercial scale. However, some of them are not toxic, they can be eaten, the fruits, and others have characteristics where they grow in special environments. However, most of these species have not been characterized and they're growing in the wild in Mexico. So the program here was, why don't we match the institutes in Mexico who know which species are there and who can characterize them and set up a germ seed bank, a germ plasm bank, characterize them, and then send the interesting species over to Europe where they do the genetic manipulation or the inbreeding to actually select those species that are, or improve those species that can be propagated. So you have little seedlings and little plants, and then you can test them out in the field. Now, we don't stop there, because the next step is you squeeze oil out of it, you can improve the efficiency, so we needed a partner who does that. We found that partner in CSIR in South Africa. And they have a small pilot field in Mozambique, where they can test some of the oil extraction processes. Now there's another weak point there in the esterification, but I will skip that. The next step is, are you growing these plants on a small scale or on a very large plantations? Then the logistics are different. You need somebody who calculates the whole economic model all the way through. And then you test out and see whether it's economically viable, whether you can actually deliver oil for energy and generate enough money for the growers so that they are actually interested in this. Next one, please. So it's the business case that is important. Really the business case, not just identifying the perfect plant. And well, you will see some of the aspects that need to be investigated. Water management, soil, logistics, distribution. There are many, many aspects and many disciplines working together. Next. And on top of that, to make things worse, regulatory affairs, you need to involve government, you need to involve landowners. That has nothing to do with the science, but if you want to bring the science out of the laboratory to the people, you have to include those aspects too. So those are critical for creating impact. Again, this project is just starting last year. We are building the platform now. The first species have been tested and are tested out in pilot fields. They seem to grow very well. But calculating the business case is something that we will do in the next 2 years. And I'm connecting these groups now with the Indian groups in India, because there's a big market there. And there are already jatropha plantations on a large scale, but with the wrong old species. What we are hoping to develop together are the second generation species. So by the time that reaches the market, it will be a few years from now, 4 or 5 years at least. Next one. So it's not just laboratory research, it's next one please. But also agricultural knowledge, industrial knowledge, prototyping, maybe even upscaling at an industrial scale. Next one. And ethical and legal issues, landowner issues. So the government needs to be involved early on so that they can immediately say, no, there's a no-go area. Or yes, maybe that is possible, but we need to make some regulations. And that takes time too. It would be stupid to have a product ready for the market and then wait for the government to adopt their regulations. That would be a very, very big mistake. So a coherent, integrated approach. That is what makes a project successful. Next one. So with that is a summary, and I think we're now for the last slide. That is almost a summary of suggestions, recommendations that are coming out of a number of these workshops that I've conducted in countries like yours, where people have come up with suggestions on, okay, think about this, because these are really important issues. So I encourage you today and tomorrow, think about it and maybe add your own suggestions, and we can bring that and help others too. So with that, next slide please. That is really the last slide. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. There might be a few comments or questions, but I noticed that during your presentation you showed us a slide and you advised us not to make whatever we want to do as complicated as the slide that you showed us. So I'm not surprised that your presentation was so simple that you offered, because you have already told us that things should be as simple as possible. So I want to maybe ask if we have some questions or comments. Well, I don't know what if I can just add. You talked about the governance structure, and then you talked about the coordinator, being the only person who can actually communicate with the European Union, and then that you also have a work package leader. So I want you to shed some more light on that. Is the work package leader an official position, or is it something that just has to be determined internally?
It is decided internally, but it is the official position in such that in the contract it will be designed that they bear responsibility for managing that work package. Now, that means that they have to transfer the knowledge or organize the transfer of knowledge from the work package to the next. And usually they sit on the project management board and they make decisions together with others on the whole project, budgets and on the reports and programs. The work package leader does not have to do everything themselves. Now, they can distribute and delegate all the work to others. They can do part of themselves because they happen to be an expert in that task. But they should be responsibility and chairing the meetings of the work package. Let me give you an example. In the RIMI for AC project, our project here, I am the work package leader for training. That means that I travel to each of the regions in the project, West Africa, here now, Central Africa, South, East, Caribbean. I talk to the local partner, in this case IDOMO, University of Ibadan, to see how can we design a training program specifically for this region. That should not be the same as in Jamaica or in South Africa, because they have other work programs going on, other works. As I will be traveling from all the regions, I have an oversight, and to see from this is what we can use from South Africa here. This is something we need to develop here locally, because nobody else has it. Things like that. So that helps to be more efficient and to avoid overlap. I organize and chair the work package meetings that we will have in the coming 2 years to judge have we progressed sufficiently? Are we lagging behind schedule, etc.? And I need to write a report to the coordinator what we have done in this work package. So I will ask Ido and the other partners, what have you done in my work package, and can you give that information to me? I write the report. And then the coordinator takes the reports from the different work packages and put everything together and write a full report on the whole project to the European Commission. So they have the responsibility, similar to a work package leader, but they have to oversee the whole project. It sounds complicated, but if you have a project with 3 work packages, the coordinator can be a work package leader and they have the same double role. And you can have multiple hats. But in the very large projects, 10, 12, 15 work packages, it's better to assign roles and to make sure that nobody is overburdened.
Very clear. Are there other questions?
Well, maybe a comment. In the same vein as what I said in the introduction this morning, I hope that many of you here as experts will become a trainer and work with us together to develop your own training material. So please regard these presentations as working material. You pick out the slides, you use whatever you think that is useful, and then try to design and develop a workshop yourself that maybe needs more slides, maybe more exercises, which you can then deliver to your scientists in your institute. And again, because I'm in Brussels, Ido is the central contact person here. If you have developed a workshop and you need material, ask him, copy me, or the other way around. If you are organizing a workshop in your institute, please notify Ido so that he knows which workshop is being conducted where. And then maybe you can share information and materials, and that saves a lot of effort, I guess.
I think on that note, we'd like to thank Frank for this simple and straightforward presentation. So I guess we now have the tea break after this. Yeah. It should be tea break after. Yeah? No, that's the next thing we have. After that, we still have the session.
Is there one more session? No. I think that's magic.
If you still have
Okay, we have. Okay.
I don't have our tea break and go.
That's fine.
We cannot keep the program themselves.
So, can we then put our hands together?
I'm happy to stay here. I'm happy to stay here to answer your questions or show up the slides. But yeah, officially tomorrow morning.
Back on the program. And then it's 9 for 9. I think one of us are staying in the US guest house, so it's not really a problem. The people from like the world school place.
I thought it was.
No, it's 9. It's 9.